Hello, everyone. I'm Ralph Schroeder. I'm a professor here at the Oxford Internet Institute. And Mike Thelwall kindly joined us to give a talk on using LLMs, large language models, for research evaluation exercises. I don't know how many of you have been subject to those. We're subject to them for sure. I'm not going to say very much about Mike, except that he's a professor up in Sheffield. He has visited us on a number of occasions here, done a bit of teaching for us. He's professor of data science up there. He's very much an information scientist. Sheffield is a very famous information science school. If you're interested in what Mike has been up to, I'm not going to try to summarize that, because he is an incredibly prolific author. I mean, he puts all of us to shame by the number of publications. Sorry to do this to you, Mike. But, I mean, his list of publications is just as long as several of my arms put together. So without further ado, I'll just say one little fun fact about him. He used to have on his website South Asian music videos. So he's very fond of South Asian music, popular music, as am I. So maybe we can get into that later. Anyway, welcome, Mike. Thanks for coming, and we look forward to the talk. Thank you. Thanks very much, Ralph. This is being recorded, so it will be posted on our website after the talk. So if you're embarrassed by anything you say, like me, watch out. But please save your questions to the end. And then we're going to take questions partly from the room and partly from those who are on Zoom. I think that's it. Okay, thanks, Ralph.
So I'm going to talk about large language models for research evaluation with a specific focus on the UK context of the Research Excellence Framework, which I'll just say a tiny little bit about. But really, the focus is on large language models for research evaluation, which I'll give examples, and hopefully that will make sense if it doesn't already. So the context is that the general context is in academia. If you work in academia, your research will be evaluated many, many times by different people and for different purposes. So when you apply for a job, the people that interview you will evaluate your research before they select you. During the shortlisting process, they'll evaluate your research. Before the interview, they'll pick some publications and evaluate them. And then your colleagues will judge you based on how they evaluate your research. And if you work in a UK university, then every 6 or 7 years, there will be a national exercise which evaluates your articles or books and gives you a score. And then the funding and the prestige of your department is partly based on the scores given to these articles. So the last ref was 2021, and I think that directs £14 billion of UK money into British universities over the lifespan. So it's a massive exercise, and it involves over 1,000 experts, mainly professors, assessing outputs, mainly journal articles, and scoring them for the quality. So the question is, with so many experts evaluating academic research and scoring how good it is, for example, in the ref, it's on a 4-point scale. Get every article gets a score of 1, 2, 3, or 4 for its quality: 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, or 4 star. And with so many things to evaluate, the question is, will the evaluators need to or resort to or benefit from using shortcuts to evaluating the quality of research? So reading a journal article properly and evaluating it properly is a slow process. So if you're doing it for a publication in a journal, that might be it might be an entire day spent just reading one article and then write your report. Maybe if it's the first time you're doing it, maybe you spend an entire week just doing an evaluation of a research article for a journal. So if you could go to ChatGPT and get it to do that job in 2 seconds, then that would be fantastic, wouldn't it? So we're not going to do that, so that's not much of a spoiler. But could it help evaluate the quality of academic research, even if it can't replace the human experts? So that's what this talk is about. Could ChatGPT help human experts to score the quality of academic research, so they can evaluate the research more quickly or more accurately. And if so, why can it do it? So this was the question I asked about just over a year ago. So I created a version of ChatGPT which is specifically designed to evaluate academic journal articles. So it's designed so that you can feed in a journal article and then it'll give you a score. So it will give you one of the ref type scores, 1, 2, 3, or 4. 4 is the top one, world leading, it's the descriptor for a 4-star, and 1 star would be a nationally relevant research. So I used the guidelines that the assessors in the REF, the National Research Evaluation Exercise, are given. So I took their guidelines almost word for word and fed them into ChatGPT. So the main thing I changed was the start, which you'll see in a little bit. But essentially, I'm telling ChatGPT the same things that the assessors were told, and then given the same document that the assessors were given, the same type of document that the assessors were given, and then see whether it gives the similar types of result. So I picked 51 of my own research articles, and then I scored these articles before I fed them to ChatGPT. So I used my own research articles because I couldn't use yours, because I'd have to get permission from you individually, and I'd have to get permission from the publishers maybe. So there's a copyright issue with taking other people's work and feeding it into a large language model. So, so I am trying to get other people's work and feeding them in, but I'm going through an enormously long ethics approval process, which I think is going to take me about an entire year to get approval to upload other people's research into ChatGPT. So I've started with my own, and then I also tried a few fake articles to see how ChatGPT works with fake research.
So you gave the fake your name?
And in fact, for everything, I didn't give. No, I didn't. No. So yeah, I don't think I did. Actually, I can't remember. I can't remember whether I took my name out or not. So it was a real article that was faked, and I can't remember whether I actually took my name out or not. That's a good question. So here are the ChatGPT instructions, and essentially everything is the same as given to the human assessors from the REF. So the senior professors, 1,000 senior professors were given these instructions. The blue bit is the main thing that changes. So we didn't tell the REF team didn't tell these professors, you are an academic expert, but I did tell that to ChatGPT. So it's part of the way you configure its instructions to tell it what it is in terms of the task it's going to do. So I'm configuring it to be an academic expert assessing journal articles in the way that is done for the REF, and it also defines the quality ratings, the 4-star quality ratings for articles. It also defines quality. So in the UK REF context, quality is originality, significance, and rigour. So it has 3 components, and that these are not universal, but they're almost always these 3 components are found in any definition of academic quality. Sometimes people put in other factors, but these are the common 3 to most definitions. So it's not unique to the UK. This is a fairly standard type of definition. I don't know whether you would think of quality being significance, originality, and rigour, but this is how it's kind of condensed in the UK research evaluation context. And this is an example of a report that ChatGPT wrote. So the first thing that surprised me a lot was that I didn't have to do any kind of playing around with ChatGPT to get it to work well. I just gave it the human-like instructions and fed it an article, bang, it works straight away. So normally with kind of artificial intelligence things, you spend forever tinkering with the system to get it to produce something useful, but it just works straight away. No tinkering at all. And if you read this report, it looks to me like it could have been written by a human. So it evaluates using the appropriate guidelines, this article, and then it gives a score. So it dithers, should it give it a 4-star or should it give it a 3-star? Gives a reasoned judgment about why it's going to give it a 3-star. So every article I fed in gave a quality rating to, and it gave an explanation about why it got that quality rating. So the applause one, I've read about 1,000 of its reports now, And I think there are only 2 cases where I thought, okay, it's made an obvious mistake that it's unlikely that a human would make. So 99.9% of the time, it's writing a report that isn't obviously not human, or not isn't it obviously not expert as well. So they're kind of maybe PhD student level evaluations, I would say, which is incredibly impressive, I think. So the question is, okay, so what it writes looks plausible, but is it actually accurate? Are the predictions it gives accurate? So this is a graph of the accuracy, which will need a little bit of explaining. So here, these are the 51 of my articles that I fed in. And I gave these articles, these are the scores underneath that I gave the articles. So 2 of my articles I scored a 1, the worst possible score for the ref. And obviously I gave loads of articles 4s, the maximum score. But I gave a range of scores here before I fed it into ChatGPT. And then on the y-axis, these are the ChatGPT scores. And I fed in every one of my articles 15 times into the system. So above the 1, this blob represents 1 of the 15 scores was something like 2.6. And then maybe about 10 of them were 3 from ChatGPT, 3.5 and 2 4s for this article that I'd scored a 1 to. Okay. So ChatGPT gave a range of different scores for an article. If you feed the article in more than once, you won't necessarily get the same score. You can get a different score. And on this graph, this rectangles show where ChatGPT gives the right score in the sense of the same score that I gave it. So it's nearly always wrong here. So it's right there and there, and there a little bit, but mostly it's wrong. Most of the time it gives the wrong score. So.
And why would it give it a different score in a different round?
It's because it has randomness built in. So if you ask it the same question, I'm sure you've noticed, if you ask it the same question twice, if it's a fairly straightforward answer to the question, you'll get the same answer phrased in a different way. But if it's a more complex question, then you can get a different answer, also phrased in a different way. So, so if I asked it this, if I fed in the same article with the same instructions 15 times, I would get 15 different reports. And maybe they all gave the same score, but the wording of the reports will be different. And in fact, some of them gave different scores. So it didn't look promising that it was nearly always wrong. But if you correlate the ChatGPT scores with my scores, the correlation is actually positive, about 0.3. So it's not guessing, it's not random, it's not guessing, it is doing better than guessing. So if I give it an article a higher score, ChatGPT is more likely to give it a higher score than not. So it's doing better than guessing. But the power comes from averaging the ChatGPT scores. So once you average the ChatGPT scores, then the correlation goes up to 0.5. So that's a modest correlation, so a much better correlation. So 0.5 is a correlation that you can work with this type of data. So it goes from being, okay, theoretically interesting at 0.3 to actually practically useful at 0.5.
Just a quick question for context of those scores. What's the iterator reliability for 2 human raters?
That's a very good question, and the answer is we don't know. We don't know. So so I haven't compared myself to other people, and for the next set of data that I'll show you, the iterator reliability hasn't been released. But we do know that if you get different academic experts to assess the same thing, disagreement is common, depending on the discipline, but disagreement is fairly common. So that the thing that would make this most impressive would be if I could say, well, the human iterator agreement for human was also 0.5, so ChatGPT is just as good. But I don't know, maybe we've got a volunteer to read these 51 of my dreadful papers and score it, and then we can have the human iterator reliability. But it's it's a big job, isn't it, reading 51 papers? So yeah, so this is something that we that I'm asking the ref team to do to release the reliability scores for the ref evaluations. And if they do that next time, then we'll have a much better way of benchmarking ChatGPT against humans.
Why have they not already done it?
I don't know. I think they haven't been asked for it before. Maybe that's probably the main reason. Maybe a subsidiary reason is you want to have you don't want to draw attention to the fact that the scores aren't 100% reliable because they direct £14 billion. So so for me that's a lot of money. I know for you maybe not so much. But
which version of ChatGPT did you use, man?
this was 4. It was a web version of 4 for this. Okay, so I then did some experiments to see how it would do with fake research. So this was the fake research paper. The title of this fake research, the title of the fake research paper was "Do Squirrel Surgeons Generate More Citation Impact?" So it was a real research paper that I'd written, and then I changed some of the words in order to make it into completely meaningless. So I'd written it, and then I thought, okay, this isn't very good. I'm not going to bother submitting it to a journal, but I had written the whole thing, and then I dithered about whether to submit it or not. So it was a complete journal article. And so I just changed 2 of the words to make it to be about squirrels. So it's asking if squirrels research squirrels doing surgery, would their research be more cited than humans doing surgery? So obviously makes no sense. So I fed that into ChatGPT, and it wrote a lovely report about this in its evaluation. It said my squirrel surgery paper was highly original, innovative, engaging with a novel approach in citation analysis. So it didn't spot that it was obviously impossible research, and it gave it a 3-star, and I fed it in several times. Sometimes it gave it a 4-star and sometimes a 3-star. So I was seriously impressed by this obviously ridiculous research. So this is worrying if we're going to use ChatGPT to evaluate research. And so I just wanted to check that I wasn't going mad. So I asked ChatGPT, can squirrels write academic research journal articles? So I just ignored the fact that they can't, and it gave a perfect answer. So kind of with one part of its brain, ChatGPT knows squirrels can't write research, but if you feed it an article about squirrels writing research, it won't notice that that's implausible. So we need a way of, I need a way of thinking about how ChatGPT works that in which that makes sense. And then another thing, even worse, I tried to make the process more efficient by just feeding the URL of an article into ChatGPT. So I fed it a fake URL. So this points to nothing. It points to a GitHub page that doesn't exist. And this is ChatGPT's report, ref evaluation of this URL that doesn't exist. And it's very specific. The model achieves a 90% accuracy on both training and test data. So it gives very specific feedback on something that doesn't exist. So it's completely, everything here is hallucinated. So it's about nothing. And it gives it a 3-star rating. So it gives nothing a 3-star rating, which again, pretty worrying if we're using this at the ref. So it has a moderately good ability to detect research quality, but it's also fairly easy to fool if you want to fool it. Okay, so I also looked to see what was necessary to input or what gave the best results from ChatGPT in terms of the input to ChatGPT. So I started off by feeding entire papers into ChatGPT, but then I tried just entering the title of the paper. So I was wondering whether ChatGPT would cross-reference the title of the paper or the URL of the paper with the full text of the paper, so I'm on the web, so I wouldn't have to feed the full paper in, and I could save money. So every query costs money in ChatGPT, so I could save money by just pointing to the URL or pointing to the title. So I tried entering just the title or just the abstract, or the text without the references and the figures, and with 3.5 turbo, 4.0 mini, the full version of 4.0, which I also tried with the PDF, and then with Gemini Flash as well, same. And for ChatGPT, it works best with the abstract, or at least it doesn't work worse than with the full text with the abstract. So you feed the title in the abstract in, and it does as good a job or a better job at evaluating the text than if you feed in the full text. So if you tell it a bit of the information, it evaluates the quality of the entire document better than if you feed it with the entire document, despite the fact that this entire document is well within the maximum limit of text that is capable of evaluating. So this was a big surprise that it didn't need the full text. It works better, especially ChatGPT 4.0 mini works better with just the title and abstract of a paper. So it's better at guessing the score. So it's got to be guessing the score if it's not fed with the full text. You can't evaluate the quality of an article just from the title and abstract. So it makes a better guess with the title and abstract than with the full text. So that means that when you do feed it in with the full text, it can't be really evaluating the full text. It must be guessing the full text. So at some level, we know it guesses, that's how it works. But it's good to have this kind of evidence to back up the fact that it is guessing. So it seems to use real world knowledge and context to the information you give it to associate the claims from the author in the abstracts with the reviewing guidelines. So it's associating the claims the author makes in the abstract with the guidelines of the ref guidelines for reviewers. Yeah, and Gemini Flash works as well, although it seems to work better for longer documents than GPT. The next thing I looked at was to see if it works for other people, not just for me. So let's try other people's research in this. And because it works better with title and abstract than the full text, this means I can put anyone's research in, because in the UK copyright law allows you to use academic research abstracts in machine learning. So you have essentially carte blanche under copyright law to do that in the UK at least. So although I can't enter your full text articles into ChatGPT, I can enter your the abstracts and titles of your articles without your permission. It's just not copyright protected. So I used so I took the ref, the UK ref, which splits all research into 34 fields called units of assessments. And I took 200 articles from each of these units of assessment and fed them into ChatGPT to see if it would get a result that correlated with the human scores or not. And the answer was, in every field except clinical medicine, it did. So in this graph, it's got the 12 of the fields, the life sciences and physical sciences and engineering. And the orange bar is the Spearman correlation between the ChatGPT score and the department average score for the article that was checked. So I didn't know the exact assessor score for each article because that's not public information. So I had to use the department average score as a proxy. And the orange bars are the theoretical maximum. So the orange bars are the maximum the correlation could be after because of the factoring out of taking the average department score instead of the individual article score. And the blue bars are the correlations I actually got from ChatGPT. So in many cases, they're quite close to the theoretical maximum. And the correlations in all cases, except clinical medicine, are moderate at least. So in all fields, ChatGPT has a reasonably good ability to guess the quality of academic research, journal articles, from just the title and abstract, is what this is saying for health and physical sciences and engineering. And do you think it's better or worse in the social sciences and humanities?
Better.
Better, yeah.
Better, okay. So yeah, the scale's a bit different, up to 0.6. So it's not so good in the humanities, but it's maybe a bit better in the social sciences. But all of the humanities and social sciences, ChatGPT has some ability to detect the quality of the articles from just the title and abstract. So just delving a bit into the data for the set of 200 articles per field. So this is the data, the individual data for the psychology example. So I took 100 articles from the top scoring psychology departments, and their average score was I think 3.7 and 3.6, so 2 departments. And these dots show the ChatGPT score. So the top scoring departments, lots of its articles, ChatGPT gave a 4-star to, and only one of its articles, ChatGPT gave just under 2.5 to. Whereas the lowest scoring department scored between 1 and 2, or just over 2, and they tended to get a 3 or lower, and they didn't get any of the 4-star scores from ChatGPT. So it was fairly good at differentiating. It's not perfect, there's some overlap, but it was fairly good at differentiating between articles from high scoring departments and articles from low scoring departments. So this was the best case psychology. The others had more overlap. Okay. So in the ref at the moment, in the ref 2021, obviously we didn't use ChatGPT, but we did use citation data in some of the units of assessment. So the experts were allowed to consult citations under certain conditions to help them make their judgment. And so this table, this graph shows the comparison between the correlation between the human scores and the other source of scores for either citations or ChatGPT or traditional machine learning applied to citation data. And it shows that ChatGPT is better. So it does a better job, it gets a higher correlation than citations. So it's already better than the technique to support human judgment that was used in Ref 2021. And it doesn't just apply to the fields where citations are already used in a ref, but it has some potential in virtually every field.
Apart from clinical medicine.
Yeah, apart from clinical medicine. And we found out the reason for clinical medicine. So we've kind of patched that. There was a technical reason in clinical medicine. Well, I'll come back to that a bit later, but it is actually, well, we did look at all the articles from clinical medicine, not just a sample of 200, and then the correlation became positive, moderate, but positive. So it's impressive, has an impressive ability to assess academic research. It's not perfect, but it's good enough that it can help humans when they struggle to make judgment. So a few other results and a couple of hopefully interesting things about in the results as well. So this is a graph of the average citation rate of journals. So this is the average citation rate of information science journals against the average ChatGPT score for the ref articles in those journals. And as you know, journals are often ranked by their average citation score with things like the journal impact factor. In the UK, that's extremely frowned upon, looking at the average citation rate for journals. So we signed up to the agreement to not use the citation rates in journal evaluations. But this shows that the average ChatGPT score for papers correlates positively with the average citation rate. So I looked at the exceptions where the kind of semi-outliers where a paper gets a relatively high ChatGPT score for its citation rate, and there are kind of plausible reasons why citations undervalue that publication. So for example, this one, a lot of the articles in this is a conference proceeding, and a lot of the articles get published in journals afterwards. So people cite the journal rather than the conference, so it kind of loses citations in that way. And this is a Chinese language journal, And I think a lot of its citations are from Chinese language papers that aren't well indexed in the source of Scopus, which I got the citation data from. So there's a reason why citations are not good for these, some of these anyway. Anyway, the more interesting graph is the next one, I think anyway. So this is medicine. So the previous graph was library and information science, and this is medicine. And here, the pattern is not as strong. It's not as strong. So you can see articles with journals with a high ChatGPT score. Nature, almost every Nature article got 4-star for its got a 4-star from ChatGPT. So you would expect that science, or almost every science article got a 4-star from ChatGPT, and also gets a high number of citations. Higher up here, more citations it gets per article. But these are outliers. So JAMA, New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, and BMJ, these get loads and loads of citations. They're like way at the top of the citation ranking list, not just for medicine, but for all journals. But they don't, they get a good score from ChatGPT, but they don't get a high score, and they don't get a really high score from ChatGPT. So ChatGPT relatively underscores clinical medicine research, so which is what's published in the Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine in particular. So I looked at these articles to see, well, why is ChatGPT not giving these articles a high score? And I think the answer is partly because the abstracts are super dry. So they don't speculate about the implications of the research much, but they'll just give you the statistics. Okay, we've 67 people got this drug, 33% died. The confidence interval is this, and they don't speculate, now we've cured cancer. They just give you the statistics, and you have to kind of draw your own inferences to a large extent from the data. They don't do kind of theory building. And if you look at the ref guidelines, so we've got rigour, so they score high for rigour, although you can't really put that in the abstract. Originality, so they don't really push the originality in the abstract. And significance, and they don't push their claim for significance. So probably New England Journal of Medicine and the Lancet published the most significant research of all journals. I mean, that's quite possible, but they don't, maybe they don't publish the most original research of all journals. So that's why ChatGPT isn't giving them as high a score as, for example, Cell, which is also an ultra good journal, but it's more theoretical because it doesn't directly deal with human health to the extent that the Lancet would. So it's interesting why it doesn't give such a high, why ChatGPT doesn't give such a high score to the clinical medicine research in these journals anyway. And to some extent, I do sympathize with ChatGPT, it being human-like. I sympathize that it can't find the originality. So fair enough that it's reluctant to give them the high score. So I think it's theoretically interesting that happens. So I also looked at what ChatGPT considers to be good and bad research in a follow-up study, and this one focused on tourism research. So I looked at thousands of tourism research papers and scored them all with ChatGPT, and I looked at the top scoring papers from ChatGPT and the bottom scoring papers from ChatGPT to try and work out what it is about those papers that it really likes and what it really doesn't like. And the general trend seems to be that it gives higher scores to abstracts that mention theory, evidence, and novelty. So if your abstract makes clear claims for those, then it likes them, and it's more likely to give a high score. And if your abstract mentions a survey or statistical tests, surprisingly, then it's less likely to give the paper a high score. You can use statistical tests, but don't mention them in the abstract. And this was funny. The top scoring tourism article was used a post-human theory to evaluate the role of lice in volunteer tourism. So it had quite an interesting theoretical construct already in the abstract. And I'm sure a lot of academics would look at this and say this is completely junk science. But so I don't agree with that. But I know that some people would. But it's clearly novel. It's clearly interesting, potentially having an impact, and genuinely original in its approach. So yeah, so it's interesting to see that that is spotted by ChatGPT, and it doesn't try to discredit this or mark it down for some people having the opinion that it's not a credible research approach. Okay, so another thing we did with ChatGPT was to apply it to the impact case study component of the ref. So in the ref, it doesn't just evaluate journal articles, but it also evaluates impact case studies, which are 5-page narratives about how the department has had research that's influenced the real world or the non-academic world. So you might have a case study about how you've influenced politics, you've made a political change in the UK or another country, or how you've made people's lives better through healthcare interventions or something else. So we fed these into ChatGPT with the same approach as before. And we found that the correlation between the ChatGPT score prediction and the departmental average score for the case studies was again positive for every unit of assessment. So it works for the impact case studies. So we can evaluate the quality of journal articles, and it can evaluate the quality of these impact case studies, which are again really, really hard to evaluate. So there are journal articles written about how hard these are to assess. So it's a really tough job. So ChatGPT doesn't do a brilliant job, but it does provide better than no evidence about the quality of these studies. So we had to fiddle about with this one. So the previous one, 5 minutes. Okay. So with the journal articles, we didn't really fiddle about with ChatGPT to get that working, but with this one, it didn't work straight away. And the reason why it didn't work straight away, we fed it with the ref guidelines and the impact case studies, and it scored them all 4-star, virtually all of them 4-star. So over 99% of them were got a 4-star. So we had to, so for this graph, we had to tinker with the instructions to tell it to be stricter. So we told it, you are a very strict evaluator assessing impact case studies, and changed a few of the other words. So we changed the quality guidelines that the human assessors were given into stricter versions. So we made the word stricter and more rigorous in various places, as well as explicitly telling it to be super strict. And we allowed it to give half scores as well, because we were hoping it would come down from all 4 stars to maybe give a few 3 stars. So this is the graph that we got with the very strict version of the instructions. Yeah. So, and also, sorry, I've missed the most important part. We didn't feed the entire impact case study in. We fed just the title and the summary. So this is based on the title and the summary of the impact case study and the super strict description. So those were the 2 changes we made, and then we got good results out of it. So again, it works better with short summary than with all the information. So it somehow doesn't have the ability to process all the information, or it gets confused if you feed it with all the information, and it makes a better guess if you only give it too little information to do a proper evaluation, which is a bit of a paradox. So the next question is, ethically, do you want a computer assessing the quality of your research? And if the ref team suddenly said to you, right, or a university that you applied to for a job said to you, we're going to get a robot to evaluate your research instead of a human, would that change the way? Would you be happy? And would it change the way you write your research? So would you rewrite your abstract to say, this is very original because the significance of this research is, this is a very rigorous study. So before we actually use this for any practical decisions, we need to think through the ethical issues and also the systemic issues. And I'm sure that if ChatGPT, well, I know ChatGPT is already used cheatingly by reviewers to assess work. They shouldn't do it, but they are. So does this mean we're already maybe feel a bit of pressure towards making sure that if a reviewer does cheat when they look at our research and feed it into ChatGPT, they do get a good score from ChatGPT? But certainly we need to think through these issues if it's used for any large-scale evaluation. So one funder is using a large language model for evaluations, but it's doing it in a very ethical way, telling the giving the people who submit grant proposals the option, the possibility to opt out, and also having humans overseeing the AI predictions for the outputs. Okay, so if you want to use this for to support research quality judgments, then I'd recommend you run the scoring 5 times and then take the average, at least 5 times and take the average to get more reliable results. It doesn't work that well for individual articles, so a correlation of 0.5 isn't that useful for individual articles, so it's as useful as citation data, slightly more useful than citation data. So you can use it in the way citation data is currently used, but it's more useful for evaluating larger sets of articles when you can expect the mistake to average out. With a correlation of 0.5, the mistake should average out pretty quickly. And also, don't forget the copyright issues. So it's a copyright infringement to upload a full text that you don't own yourself. But you can use the abstracts and titles for research purposes in the UK. So there's a specific law allowing you to do that. And yeah, finally, don't cheat on don't let the takeaway message from this be, I can save 2 weeks of assessing for the next conference or journal by uploading it to ChatGPT. It will generate a plausible report, but its accuracy isn't high enough to replace your accuracy, which will be much higher.
On that comforting note, thank you very much, Mike. Great. Shall I see if there are questions already online? No, there are not. Please. I mean, I have. Yeah,
Very
please.
good question. So when you're feeding the ChatGPT some article and he's giving you a response, okay, if he's giving me a wrong response or a low score, should I ask him to reason? Why are you scoring it like that? Why are you telling it's not right or not true or not good? Should we ask him to how he's reasoning that?
Yeah, so I've set it up so that it will give an explanation for the score. So whatever score it gives, it will explain why it gave that score. And if you're not sure, you can ask it, can you clarify this? So what I've found with this, that although the explanations are plausible, they're always a little bit vague. So the explanations are kind of vague enough that you think, okay, well, you said this is the reason why you're giving it a 4-star, but that could also cover a 3-star or the other way around. So it's hard to tie it down to give really a concrete reason why it gave the score. And I think the fundamental reason is because it doesn't have a reason. It's just making associations. So it's making an intelligent guess, not really having a good reason.
Okay, for example, I mean, I'm doing it for my college work, and I ask him, hey, I'm not so sure this is the right thing. Are you sure? Why are you saying me this is the thing and this is not? I mean, to have a conversation with the ChatGPT to explain to him why are you not so sure about that? Can we use it like that way?
So I haven't used it for that. So I haven't asked ChatGPT how certain it is for the scores.
Yes, I mean,
But
make him kind of say dig in more about that topic.
yes, I think it will keep with the vague. So I tried to do that at the start. I tried to work out exactly why it was giving, for example, a 3-star rather than a 4-star. So I tried to ask it repeated questions at the start. So I haven't reported on that. but it didn't, I couldn't tie it down to anything that was kind of very clear. And maybe that's the same with the human expert. If you asked me if I evaluated a journal article for a journal and why I gave it I don't know, a major revisions rather than a minor revisions, it will probably be very difficult for me to give you a very precise reason. So it's kind of partly a feeling. So you find things you like and you don't like, but then it's partly a feeling, the judgment, whether this overall you should give major revisions or minor revisions. And that's not, that's kind of plausibly what ChatGPT is doing. It's kind of, is going with its gut feeling, which is association rules, rather than having really a clear logical explanation for its grade. So you can keep asking it questions and it will keep giving you answers, but they won't necessarily help you. Yeah.
Lisa, I think you were next.
This area of language models are moving so fast. So almost every week or every month we have a new generative transformer language model out there. So I was wondering, because you tested it against, you focused very much on ChatGPT and OpenAI version 4, but what about Perplexity and Claude and all these other ones that are increasingly being used in academic research? Are you implementing that, testing that as well, or repeating your same project with and doing a comparative analysis? Which tool should we be using in academia?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've focused on ChatGPT, and I've also done systematic experiments with Gemini Flash. But obviously DeepSeek is the next big one.
They've stolen everything from OpenAI, apparently.
Have they? So the reason why I haven't done more experiments is well, partly time. So I've only been doing this for a year, and partly cost. So I've spent about I spent 1.5 times my entire research budget on just ChatGPT queries. So it's not cheap to do all of these queries. And the problem is you have to submit a lot of queries for a lot of documents to get statistically significant results. And also the costly bit is the system instructions. Really, the abstracts are quite short, but the system instructions are about 1.5 pages. So yeah. So
can I have one more question?
Please.
I was fascinated by the fact that ChatGPT performed worse in certain disciplines.
yeah.
Like you explained the clinical medicine one, but I noticed philosophy was very weak. And I thought and classics was really good. And I thought, is that a copyright thing? Because they have trained the model really well in classics, but not in philosophy. Or what is your thoughts about it? Why?
I think for the humanities, it's partly what the abstract is and whether the abstract is genuinely the type of a genuine summary, first of all, and also a summary that tends to capture the originality, significance, and rigor of the article. So I think it's probably hard to capture rigor even hint at rigor in an abstract of a humanities article. You could capture originality and significance probably, but
the philosopher is stronger than the machine.
Yeah, so in the future we might see philosophers, everyone, trying to make sure their abstracts do capture the kinds of things that the large language models look for, originality. Yeah, and that might change the nature of abstracts, maybe for the worse. I don't know.
So a very related question. Thank you for your talk. Like how would you deal with these kind of adversarial relationships? So if I know that this funding body, which I'm very keen on impressing, is using ChatGPT, and I also have access to ChatGPT, I can kind of automatically tune my research or the framing of my research to focus a lot on making the abstract very good for a large language model. Which might make it diverge from actual human evaluations, but maybe you wouldn't notice because you're actually leaving the job to the machine.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky question. So I just for fun on one of my real articles, not one of the 51, I asked ChatGPT, rewrite this abstract so that you will give it a 4-star with these guidelines, and it suggested a few rewrites, and then I fed it into it and I said, give this a a quality rating and it said 3-star. So it's not perfect, but I think that you have quality control. So if I submit an article to a journal and I know the reviewers won't look at the abstract, then I can write the abstract for ChatGPT. But in reality, reviewers look at the abstract, probably look at your abstract more than any other part of your article. So they will pick up if you overclaim in the abstract. And probably the abstract influences them more than the rest of the article. So as a reviewer, if I've got a bad feeling after the abstract, then I probably won't even read the rest of the article as carefully as I really should. If the abstract, so for example, a big overclaim in the abstract, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm wasting my time reading this article carefully because the author's already claimed that they've done a comprehensive survey and they've got rigorous results. So some keywords in the abstract suggesting that the author's overclaiming is already telling me this isn't likely to be good research. So I shouldn't read it. I don't have to read it as carefully as I would if they'd made very careful claims in the abstract. So hopefully that will stop authors from writing for ChatGPT. So I guess the trick will be to write it for the field reviewers so that you're not overclaiming, but you are actually including the important claims. So you're making kind of maybe more precise claims, but the big sin would be to not make the claims at all. So the big sin would be to have an abstract which doesn't hint at or make any claim or reference to rigour, originality and significance. So in fact, we're already trained to do that for the refs. So in Sheffield, we have training sessions for writing abstracts to highlight what the ref reviewers are looking for. So we're sort of already ready for ChatGPT with ref reviewers.
I hope you've gotten paid well for giving that advice, Mike. We have a question here from online. Are there any differences between structured or normal abstracts?
So I didn't look systematically at that, and the problem is that a journal will either have all structured abstracts or all normal abstracts. But Lancet has structured abstracts. New England Journal of Medicine has structured abstracts. So the underperforming journals did have structured abstracts. So it is a bit of an issue, and we know that structured abstracts are better than non-structured abstracts overall, at least in medicine. Yeah, there are studies that say that it's easier to comprehend in some fields, probably not in philosophy, sociology, but in some fields it's easier to understand what's in an article if they have a structured abstract. But yeah, so it doesn't translate into ChatGPT.
Interesting. Zila.
More on like the human trying to game the system. So I'm wondering, like, not like about like the language about writing the abstract, but more about like selecting specific topics. So like if like the researchers started to like guess what ChatGPT like about the topic, well, that kind of distort the field. And also like we know like in many cases the large language model tend to replicate existing bias. So like if you add these two together, we might see like the large language model like skew like the whole focus of the field. Do you see that as a risk of like using?
Tough one.
Yeah, that's you're really stretching me now. So that's obviously, that's definitely a risk. So ChatGPT I'm still getting to grips with understanding how it rates things kind of broad topics differently. So it tends to give higher scores overall for medical research and biological research, and lower scores overall for arts and humanities research, and then social sciences are in the middle. So in terms of broad topics, it does have a skew. So in the ref is organized so that every field has pretty much the same average score. So the average arts output gets the same score as an average clinical medicine output, but ChatGPT doesn't work that way. So it scores virtually every clinical medicine article higher than virtually every arts article. So ChatGPT does have a hierarchy of subjects, and that probably translates into a hierarchy of topics. There'll be some topics it doesn't like, so it gives lower scores to. So yeah, it is a risk. if we use ChatGPT too much, that people will maybe not want to do that type of research. We already have that with citations. People in some fields won't want to do topics that you don't get cited for. So in literature, for example, if you think citations are important, study Shakespeare. And if you don't care about citations, then you might maybe study an obscure author that no one else has read. Your work won't get cited, but you might get respect for doing that research. So we already have that with citations a little bit. So so that we will get the same effect with ChatGPT if people considered its judgment to be important, I guess. So that's what we're waiting to see, whether people will take ChatGPT's opinion seriously, I guess.
If there are no more questions, oh, one, sorry.
Did it take longer ChatGPT to answer after you introduced the prompt? If there were like more complex questions, I don't think I'm explaining.
Yeah, so I have to think about cost. So I use the slowest and cheapest method of accessing ChatGPT, which is through the API, and I use the batch mode on the API. So I tell it what I want to do, and then it comes back within 24 hours and says it's finished it. So my delay is 24 hours, but after 24 hours, I'll get 20,000 results all in one batch. So yeah, so if you use the web, my experience with probably you have different experiences with the web interface, but my experience is it's usually fairly quick, except for the new 401, is it? Which I don't use very much, but it shouldn't be too slow. Although it's a complex task, it should be able to process an entire journal article without any problem. So it's well within its maximum window for coping with content. So it shouldn't slow it too much. Does that make sense?
A very brief technical comment. So you mentioned that a big part of the cost comes from having long instructions. That like most of the API providers have this feature called prompt caching, where you can kind of reuse the processing of the system prompt, which can lead to pretty big cost reductions. So if you run for more of these experiments, that's something you might want to consider to stretch the budget a little bit.
Okay,
I
thank
think you owe him a drink.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
So I think I've tried all the versions available in ChatGPT, but maybe that's okay. That will work in others, but I think I've tried all the versions in ChatGPT. So I was thinking of maybe doing the fine tuning and incorporating the system instructions in the fine tuning, but I worked out the cost, and that's actually more expensive to switch to a fine tuned model where you don't have to enter the system instructions because they're already in. But yeah, it's a constant war to keep the cost down.
I have one final question, if I may, because this is being recorded. And, I really think that all the people who are involved in the REF at Oxford and elsewhere should be in this room because, we could really, improve and make things easier. But my question is kind of different, which is that, there are a lot of ethical issues and a lot of social implications of if you use this to actually measure the output on the output side. My question is, if nothing huge like billions hangs on it, the process, of course, is also taking place within the universities. So, when I get entered into the REF at Oxford here, I have to submit my articles to an internal panel, and I'm on internal panels having to evaluate the work of my colleagues. Now, no billions hang on it, but that work could easily be automated if what you're saying is correct. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm going to do it next time, but I mean, isn't that a much less problematic use, and wouldn't that kind of drive efficiency?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm in the same position. I get frequent requests to internally review things that will eventually will or won't eventually go into the ref. Early versions of impact case studies are articles that we deciding whether we will or won't submit to the ref. So it's a lot of work. But then it's also an important decision. So I wouldn't want to trust ChatGPT, but it could be used as like a third opinion. So in Sheffield, we'd have 2 people evaluate an article. And then maybe if they, maybe the way ChatGPT could be used, or any other large language model, is if the 2 disagreed and they just couldn't make a final decision, then we'd say, okay, let's go to ChatGPT and use it as a tiebreaker. Instead of spinning a coin, let's go to ChatGPT. Or they could use it as a sanity check. Okay, this is this range of scores we're getting. What does ChatGPT say? And if there's anything there's a big discrepancy, we'll have another look at that. So if there's something that ChatGPT is giving a very high score, but the 2 departmental reviewers gave a low score to, you might say, okay, well, let's send this to a 3rd reviewer just to be safe, or the other way around. So I think it could be useful for that. Yeah. And another way it can be used, the way that the research evaluators are using it, is they're using it for the grant evaluators. They're using it for triage. So they get so this particular funder gets 270 grant applications for each one of its funding rounds, and it funds very few of those, and it sends every grant to 3 medical experts, and it pays them quite a lot of money to carefully review them. And it noticed that some of these grants just weren't very good at all, and the reviewers gave them all low scores. So the way they use large language models is in a triage role. So they put all the initial proposals with permission into large language models, and then the third of the proposals that get really low scores, they give it to 2 human experts to do a light review on. And the question they ask the 2 human reviewers is there any chance this proposal could be funded? And if both reviewers say, no, this proposal couldn't be funded, then it doesn't go into the full 3 reviewer expert review. So they save maybe 20% of the reviewer time by filtering out the kind of I don't want to say really bad, but the unlikely to be funded work for the proposal. So I think that's an ethical, useful application where some time is saved, not an enormous amount of time, but some time is saved, and it's a ethically reasonable approach. So that's something that could be done here, where for all evaluations, maybe where the definitely lower scoring impact case studies or articles are pulled out and say, okay, we can be pretty sure these aren't going to go in, and we don't have to go through the process of making academics spend a day evaluating lots of articles, as many articles. Can I switch this onto the reference page? Just
Oh yeah, yeah. So there's lots of papers. Mike is around for a few minutes if you have questions that you didn't have a chance to answer, but we will surely have you back at least after the next graph to see what happens. Thank you so much. Fantastic talk. And